Today's story sounds simple on the surface. President Trump met with major U.S. oil executives and says a deal involving Venezuela could lower gas prices in the United States. But once you slow it down, this isn't just an energy story. It's a story about risk, trust, geopolitics, and whether promises from power are enough to unlock hundreds of billions of dollars in real investment. So in this video, we're focusing on one core part of the story: the White House meeting itself and the plan Trump put on the table. Not the reactions, not the politics first, but the actual idea behind it. Because if this plan works, it could reshape oil markets for decades. And if it fails, it becomes another example of how reality resists simple solutions. Let's break it down. Venezuela matters because it holds the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than anyone. And yet, despite that advantage, Venezuela's oil industry is a shadow of what it once was. At its peak, the country produced over 3 million barrels of oil per day. Today, it produces only a fraction of that. The reasons are well known: years of mismanagement, corruption, sanctions, loss of skilled workers, decaying equipment, and repeated seizures of foreign-owned assets. From the Trump administration's perspective, that collapse represents opportunity. The logic goes like this: if Venezuela's oil production can be revived, global supply increases. If global supply increases, prices come down. And if prices come down, American consumers benefit. That's the foundation of the pitch. So Trump invited major U.S. oil executives to the White House. This included leaders from companies like Chevron, ExxonMobil, and ConocoPhillips. This wasn't a symbolic meeting, it was a sales pitch. Trump argued that Venezuela's oil infrastructure could be rebuilt with massive investment, potentially hundreds of billions of dollars over time. Drilling rigs repaired, refineries modernized, production ramped up. He framed it as a win on all sides. Venezuela gets jobs and revenue, U.S. companies gain access to enormous reserves, and Americans get cheaper gas. But here's the first reality check. Oil executives don't invest based on speeches. They invest based on systems, contracts, courts, rules that don't change overnight. And that's where Trump's proposal gets unusual. At the center of the plan is the idea that the United States would control the proceeds from Venezuelan oil sales. In simple terms, oil would be produced in Venezuela, but the money from those sales would be managed under U.S. oversight, not directly by Venezuelan authorities. The administration argues this solves several problems at once. It reduces corruption, it reassures investors, and it prevents oil money from flowing to U.S. adversaries like China, Russia, and Cuba. From a strategic point of view, it's bold. From a business point of view, it's highly unconventional. Oil companies usually deal directly with sovereign governments, not foreign governments managing another country's resources. That raises serious questions. Who enforces contracts? Who settles disputes? What happens if leadership changes? And what happens if political priorities shift? These aren't theoretical concerns. They determine whether billions of dollars move or stay on the sidelines. Knowing fear is the biggest obstacle, Trump made another promise during the meeting: security guarantees. He pledged that U.S. oil companies investing in Venezuela would receive protection and backing from the U.S. government. In other words, if you invest, the U.S. government has your back, diplomatically, politically, and in terms of security. But this is where another hard truth enters the picture. Security is not the same as stability. You can guard facilities, you can protect personnel, but you can't guard a legal system. Executives remember what happened in Venezuela before: assets seized, contracts rewritten, investments wiped out. those memories don't disappear because of a promise. And that hesitation showed in how executives responded. Publicly, no one slammed the door, but no one committed either. The head of ExxonMobil was especially direct, pointing out that Venezuela is effectively uninvestable without a complete overhaul of its legal and commercial framework. Others echoed the same concern more carefully. They want rule of law. They want enforceable contracts. They want predictable taxes and regulations. Without those, long-term investment doesn't happen, no matter how big the oil reserves are. Chevron stands out in this story. It's currently the only major U.S. oil company still operating in Venezuela. That gives Chevron experience on the ground, but it also gives them exposure to the same risks everyone else sees. Even Chevron has moved cautiously. Another major part of Trump's argument was gas prices. Again and again, he returned to the idea that this deal would lower prices for American consumers. It's a powerful message, but it's also more complicated than it sounds. Oil is a global market. Even large increases in production take years to materialize. Infrastructure doesn't rebuild itself overnight. That means this isn't a quick fix. If it works at all, it's a long-term supply strategy, not an immediate price drop. And that leads to the biggest obstacle of all: trust. Not security, not oil reserves, not even money. Trust. Investors don't just want protection, they want confidence that the rules won't change again. Several executives made the same point in different ways. Without a stable, rule of law-based government in Venezuela, serious capital will stay away. Security can open the door, only institutions keep it open. So what was this meeting? It wasn't a deal, it wasn't an agreement, it was an opening argument. Trump offered vision, pressure, and promises. Oil executives responded with interest and caution. What happens next depends less on speeches and more on systems, because in the energy world, money doesn't follow power, it follows predictability. And Venezuela's biggest challenge isn't oil, it's credibility.